Hydroflux Redefining Your Lifestyle presents the return of the Singapore Parenting Festival. Join our amazing hosts in a series of 8 free webinars that cover fertility and pregnancy concerns, parenting tips for newborns to fussy eaters, living with COVID and vaccinations, and guides from preschool to PSLE. Register now and attend our webinars for your chance to get an exclusive SPF goodie bag while stocks last. The Singapore Parenting Festival is proudly brought to you by MediaCorp and the Asian Parent. Platinum Partner, 100% organic drip chicken essence with cordyceps. Gold Partners, Dumix Dugrow, comprehensive nutrients. Scott's Vitamin C for kids' immunity. Nature One Dairy, your partner in parenthood. PCF Sparkle Tots, we sparkle lives. And the following silver and other partners. Hydroflux.
Hello and good evening. Thank you all so much for joining us today. It's midweek, it's hump day, and I do hope that together with the panelists tonight on the panel that we're presenting, the topic that we're presenting, we'll be able to give you that little bit of a lift to help you end your day on a more positive note. We want to thank you all very much for joining us again. The Singapore Parenting Festival is proudly presented to you by the Asian Parent and MediaCorp. Also, our platinum partner, Hydroflux, Yu Yang Sang, our gold partners, Dumix, Scott's, PCF Sparkle Tots, Nature One Dairy, silver partners, the Ministry of Health, Singapore, Baby Dove, Virtus, Fertility Center, and Prudential. Our content partners, the Center for Fathering, Dads for Life and Mums for Life, Baby Pass, and Families for Life. And we're glad that you're able to join us this evening because not only do we have great content for you, we have contests right throughout the Parenting Festival. The webinars, of course, have been great. Those of you who've been with us the last few nights, I hope you've enjoyed all the topics, and I hope you'll enjoy today's and also tomorrow's. You might have also signed up for that. There was a grand sale that's also going on as part of the festival. Tonight, we're going to go into this topic that you see on your screen, ensuring your family's well-being. And those of you who are in this webinar tonight, you may be mom, you may be dad, you may be grandma or grandpa. It doesn't matter who or what you are in the family. You know, your family's well-being is very important, and we want to talk about it in a more holistic sort of way. It's not just about the physical well-being of your family, but also the social and emotional parts of the family and how we as parents and as spouses will be able to partner each other and work more closely together so that our children and the rest of our family will be well. Mental wellness is something that has been talked about quite a lot, and hopefully today we'll be able to give you answers to some of the questions that you might have. Okay, before we start though, we do have some house rules, okay? All of you are automatically muted. You can ask questions. There is a Q&A box, and we encourage you to put in your questions into that Q&A box. And the Q&A session will be held immediately after the presentations by our 3 panelists. Okay, so the only way you can ask questions is to type it into our Q&A tab, and you can see that actually on your screens. And we also must tell you that tonight's webinar, as with all webinars that are part of the festival, they're all being recorded, okay? And of course, what would a Singaporean event not be without a lucky draw? Well, it's not so much a lucky draw, but there will be lucky attendees who will win a $50 Shopee voucher each. I'm told that the 3-3 sale is coming up. So here's where the $50 can go, okay? Part of the 3-3 sale, you've had the 1-1-2-2-3-3, that's coming up tomorrow. So that would go to good use, I'm sure. So we'll announce the 6 lucky attendees at the end of tonight's seminar, all right? So we are going into the first topic, but before that, we want you to scan this code, and you can do it quickly with your phone. If not, you can use the URL that's been provided as well. Just scan the code, and the first 150 attendees to scan this QR code will receive a really special goodie bag. Okay, so we'll give you a couple of seconds to whip out your phone if you haven't got your phone with you. So go find it. I'm sure you have, everyone's got their phone with them nowadays, right? So just scan the QR code. The first 150 attendees will actually receive a really special goodie bag here. All right, so this is actually very exclusive. It's an exclusive Singapore Parenting Festival goodie bag. Okay, so whilst you're getting all that, if for those of you who are typing in the URL, please do that. But before that, here's a short clip that we would like to share with you, which is part of Families for Life. Enjoy this clip. I am sorry, this is my finger that's not working for me. So I was muted. So anyway, let me start all over again. The 6th edition of the I Still Do by Families for Life is back. Lots of exciting programs. This initiative actually began some years ago. This year's program began on Valentine's Day on the 14th of February and will continue right through till the 13th of March. It's a 1-month program, a campaign that invites soon to be married couples, newly married couples. You could be a couple, you've been married for 20, 30, 40, 50 years. You can still take part in this particular campaign. And really it's about celebration. It's about a celebration of love. It's about a celebration of your dedication to each other and to your families. And really it's about nurturing a lifelong, long-lasting, harmonious relationships. It's about love, it's about commitment. And this is what the I Still Do campaign is all about. There are online activities that you can take part in, and couples, you can actually look forward to really fun ways to strengthen your bonds, okay? And you can sign up for marriage programs. These are ongoing programs that are being held by the Families for Life. You can sign up for them anytime. And really, it's about building that strong foundation. And we all know how important that might be, particularly if you are about to get married. There's still time. You might have known each other for a long time, or you might not have. But these marriage prep programs do go a long way in helping all of us actually get to know each other a little bit better and learn how to communicate. At the end of the day, it's all about communication and how we send those messages to each other. So if you want to find out more, you can. You can go into this website, which is familiesforlife.sg. Okay, you can scan that QR code to find out more information, but the website address, once again, www.familiesforlife.sg. Okay, so let's get tonight underway. My name is Susan Ng, and I'm with CNA 938, which is, of course, a Media Corp station. We're part of CNA. And I host quite a lot of programs on CNA, a whole gamut of different genres, different topics. But there is one talk show that I've hosted actually for the last 23 years. I know it's been a long time, right? We've gone through different titles of the show. Currently, it's called Family Ties. But the Families and Parenting program is very close to my heart. So I'm really, really happy to be here tonight, to be able to share and be a part of a family event. And families are very important. And so this is something that I have, personal interest in. Now, that's it about me. I do want to get started with the panelists who are all waiting to share their thoughts and their views with you. And the first, we'd like to just introduce all 3 speakers at the start so you get to know them a little bit better. Alvina Chin. Well, Alvina is someone I've spoken with actually on my talk show. And, we had a lot of fun, did we, Alvina, as we were talking one Saturday morning. But Alvina is a mom herself, and she's a volunteer. She is a family life educator. She's with Moms for Life, which is an initiative under the Center for Fathering, and she's a volunteer with them and spends a lot of time sharing the parenting message, the mothering message, and also the messages that are brought to all of us in the community by Moms for Life, as well as Dads for Life. Our second speaker is a medical doctor, Dr. Sidharth Kachroo. And if we change the slide, we'll be able to see Dr. Sidharth up on the screen. He's a medical director and head of medical portfolio management with Prudential. He's got lots of experience in the healthcare industry, but I think, the thing is that he's a dad as well. I think that's important. He's a dad. He understands what it's like to look after our children's well-being, and not just physically, but mentally, socially. And of course, now that we're in the midst of a very different sort of health situation in Singapore, perhaps, in this lifetime, for many of us, it's the first time we've lived through something like that. And so we do want to take care of not just the mental health, not just our relationships with each other, but we also want to look after our children's physical well-being in terms of their health. And so we'll hear from Dr. Sidharth his views on how we can do that during this time of COVID. And our third speaker this evening on our panel is Bryan Chua. Now, Bryan is going to talk about something that all mothers who, if you're listening, right, you're going to go, you see, I tell you, you're going to drink water every day. And that's it. Bryan is the water expert. He works with Hydroflux Marketing. And this is something that, I don't know, my mother, let me tell you a secret. When I was growing up, my mother always said, drink more water, drink more water. But, sometimes water just tastes too bland and we don't know what to do with it. And we make ourselves drink it. And now that I'm older, I know I have to drink it, but I can tell you, sometimes I would rather reach out for that sweet drink. Okay, Bryan, you didn't hear that. So sometimes I would rather do that, but I know that water is important. And there's a reason why water is important. And so we're going to hear from Bryan why it is so important for us to drink water, what it means to be hydrated, what it means not to be dehydrated. And, and he'll share his expertise with us a little bit later and how he can help flavor that water for the children who may not like that bland taste of water. After a while, water is sweet, right? Okay, so we're going to launch a little poll at this time before we start our first presentation with Alvina. Okay, so the question you see there, my spouse and I support each other well in parenting. Choose one. Do you agree or do you not agree? And you'll have those choices up on your screen. Just click on that little circle there. Either you agree or disagree with that particular statement. My spouse and I support each other well in our parenting journey. Okay, so we'll give you a couple of seconds more to click on that, and then we'll show you the results of the poll immediately. All right, so, you see? All right, Alvina, your job's done, right? 86%, you can turn on your microphone, 86% of our attendees actually agree with that statement. The 14% who disagree, gee, I would love to have a chat with you. I'm sure Alvina would too, to find out why. Or maybe, you have reasons for not agreeing with that. But I think that's a great preamble, Alvina, for you to start talking with us about your topic. And we know that parenting is a partnership. Sometimes we forget that, I know I do. And sometimes we forget that not only is it a partnership, but it needs to be communicated. It needs to be intentional. So nurturing our family's well-being is Alvina's topic tonight. And so let me hand over the microphone to you now, Alvina. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Susan. Well, that's really heartwarming to find the results from the votes. I think that's good. That's good news, I think, all around, to see that moms and dads are partnering together. And I think that's really positive. So for the remainder of you out there, and I think there's still something we can take home from today's topic that I'm very happy to share: parents as partners, nurturing family well-being. So what I'd like to start off with really is to read a portion of this quote. And it says, the well-being of children is almost entirely and directly in the hands of their parents. No pressure. Okay, I think as parents, no pressure there. But really, at the same time, I don't think it's much of a surprise either. But what I think we can take away from this quote itself is how our involvement can help to lighten the external pressures that our children may face on a regular basis, and how our decisions and our actions have direct impact in our children's development and really their ability to cope with stresses as well as the challenges they'll face throughout the course of their lives. Now, we also realize that actually it's more complicated than just family and parents' involvement. There are a whole range of factors that we should consider as well. But for this particular segment, I'm just looking at family life really, because the family environment and really the family relationships, the quality of the relationships we have at home, they have a huge impact on the well-being of both parents and children. So it isn't just about good nutrition, right? There's a relational aspect to the family well-being. And so the home environment matters a great deal. So in particular, I'd like to point out as well that it's what we're talking about here, what I'll be talking about here is the father's participation in child caregiving and the mother's sense of well-being. What we'll normally find out is whenever we talk about home environment, the domestic leadership and authority falls upon the wife or the mother, right? So based on findings from 2020 Ipsos and UWS study, 90% of the Singaporeans who responded agree that household chores can be equally shared by husband and wife. Now, is that really true? Is that what wives and mothers think? Well, glad to say that the moms who are present here today feel the same way. So you're part of this 90%, and I'm glad that it's worked out for you. But what do wives or mothers think from the study? So we found out that over 40% of the women from the study say that they are doing way more around the house. And nearly 50% of the women shared that they are also responsible for child caregiving and anything related to education. So moms are filling those forms, coming back from school, right? And over half of the mothers as well, they've actually reported that they're feeling a lot of stress and they're struggling to cope with the demands of household responsibility and really family caregiving. So these findings itself, they show us, they tell us that some things need to change for couples to have a better partnership at marriage. So, what can we do about this, right? So what can parents do? What can couples do to nurture family well-being? So I've got 3 points I'd like to share. My first point is to commit to and agree on shared responsibilities. Now, at this point, I just want to debunk this myth of equally shared responsibilities, okay? Because I think this expectation or misunderstanding actually causes a lot of strain in relationships, in marriages. Because what I like to put out there is just a change in perception, really, that shared responsibilities, it doesn't mean sharing them equally. Right? Honestly, if you think about it, at different stages of relationship, of marriage, and of parenthood, sometimes it feels like a 90-10%. So that's not an equal split, really, right? Just think about when you become new parents and there's a newborn in the house. The demand on the mom to meet that immediate physical need of the newborn is really high, especially if the mom chooses to breastfeed. So parents as partners, we need to commit to share responsibilities with realistic expectations at reasonable standards. I think this is something that we'll talk about in a little bit more in a while. So the idea of shared responsibilities should not be so much about, how well did you do this, right? Because it's not a competition. What we really want coming out from shared responsibilities is the understanding of why we're committed to doing this together, why we're committed to share this load together. And for this to happen, regular, open, clear communication is critical because as partners, we need to agree on what the family needs and how best we can meet those needs. And of course, at the same time, this communications or these conversations, they really need to be open for renegotiations as well. And then sometimes we plan a lot of great things and we agree on a lot of things, but they don't really happen as expected. So allow room for renegotiations, at different stages of parenthood, all the changes in life, all the unpredictability, we need to be open to this so that we can continue to be committed partners when it comes to shared responsibilities.
I have a question here for you, actually,
Sure.
Ms. Alvina. I'm going to interrupt you just for a little bit.
No worries.
And this could be questions that new moms have. You're a mom, you know this, right? When I became a new mom, I was afraid to share those responsibilities Do you know what I'm saying? Because you want to have control. So you go, no, I think I'll just do it myself. And then I know I get it right. I see Dr. Sidharth actually nodding his head as well. And even dads, I mean, Dr. Sidharth, right? Even dads sometimes, look, let me just do it. And so we become the gatekeepers unknowingly, and we shut other people out. Mm-hmm. Talk to me a little bit about that, because we don't mean to shut people out, but by our actions, we actually do. And then Dr. Sid, maybe as a dad, you even step away, you go, okay, you know what? You do it. Yeah.
All right. We have we have parents here who get it. And I can relate to that, Susan, very, very much. Yeah. So really, to the second point I have is to value and appreciate differences. So we always hear, how can we get dads more involved? Dads, you really need to get more involved. So how can wives get their husbands to do more? Right. So again, don't get overexcited, because there's no secret formula here, unfortunately. Right. But what we should actually consider, but here's the thing, right? The barriers to the father's involvement here isn't necessarily a disinterested dad or an oblivious father, or even an incapable father, right? Because sometimes, like you said, Susan, it's the mother, okay? The mother herself. And so you said gatekeeping. So yes, there's this term we call maternal gatekeeping, right? And it refers to mothers being territorial over family matters. And this is usually fueled by this perception that, I'm more capable than my husband to handle these parenting skills. I know better. I can handle discipline better. I can handle the academic support better. I can, show affection in the way my children need. So what happens with that, of course, naturally, is that mothers become more controlling. And even if they let go, they micromanage. Okay, I think even as I'm saying this, I'm also speaking from my own personal experience here, right? You micromanage, and really what happens next is then you share less of the child caring activities with your husband. And then after that, we go back and like, but why aren't you doing more? Okay, and the husband's like, oh, I don't know. I want to be safe here, right? So part of this negative perception, apart from this maternal gatekeeping and the perception, really, it's really to do with the differences in approach of both parents, right? Mom and dad, we do things differently in many ways. Okay, so for example, if your child comes home upset, right? One parent might choose, oh, let's talk about this, tell me what happened your day, and then give me the whole version of it, right? Whereas another parent might decide, okay, I'm going to sit with you. I won't say a thing. I won't even ask you what happened. And I'm just going to give you a hug. So if you think about it, either approach a parent takes, the child benefits from the care of a parent, right? And not only that, you actually provide the child with an option of what they need and who to go to meet that need. So so what happens here is the differences that each parent brings to the table, it actually makes up a richer home environment, and it benefits the child tremendously. Because what you also do is you actually help them to develop large and flexible skills that they can draw upon, whenever they need them. So when mothers, what I would like to encourage mothers to do is in valuing the fathering role, that we encourage fathers, that we create opportunities for them. And I think no mom would complain when we say, moms, can you just step back a bit? Can you just chill a bit, right? And allow room for dad to step in and then, do your thing, kind of, right? So encourage fathers, as we create opportunities for them to participate in child caregiving. Research findings continue to support over and over again that father involvement increases when mothers create opportunities and encourage them. Because what happens is, on the job, the father's confidence grows, right? And then they begin to recognize the significance of their fathering role. And then the more they're encouraged in their efforts to try to, help around the house with parenting, the more inclined they will want to share, parenting activities, and the more inclined they will be to, to interact with the children as well. So give it a try. My last point, support and step up. Again, back to the 50-50 myth, that's that split equals split, right? Insisting on that equal split, you do this, you do, it's going to take on a competitive spin. And yes, you are going to start keeping score. So don't pretend that you don't, Okay, some of you don't, I would say for myself, we're keeping score, right? So, and after that, it builds up the resentment, right? So, okay, so we'll just do away with that perception of that 50-50 split, right? So, because what I would prefer as a couple would be parents as partners to actually take the initiative to, notice what's going on around the house. Don't take each other for granted, right? Take notice of what's happening in your children's life, ask the right questions and all that, as well as the initiative to offer support when it's needed. You don't have to wait to help around the house, really, because there's a lot of unpredictability going around there. I mean, the COVID situation, it's turned our world upside down. And a lot of people have had to adjust being in each other's space and faces for the longest time, right? So even as parents, as partners, we also should take the initiative to, sometimes we have to develop a practical skill that we feel will be a huge help to the family and able to help, in terms of meeting the family's needs. Because what you find is the more we encourage fathers to be involved, the more we, as moms, we take a step back. And fathers gain this positive attitude about shared parenting, the better the relationship they have with the children, more so than fathers who have the traditional mindset of caregiving being a mother's responsibility. And wives in relationships that practice shared responsibilities are much happier in their motherhood role in society, as well as feeling satisfied in marriage. So really, this whole thing we're talking about, it's good for the dad, it's good for the mom, it's good for the children, it's good for the marriage. So, with the growing numbers of dual income families, 47% to 52% in 2020, couples as parents, we need to work hard on being strong, committed partners in nurturing our family well-being together. Not just because the task is monumental, it's a lifetime commitment, but really also because we complement each other as husband and wife. Moms and dads, we have irreplaceable and complementary roles. We bring, as different as we are, we bring a lot to the table, and it benefits the family, it benefits the children. And as I wrap this up, I just want to also share how at Moms for Life, we celebrate a mom's unique identity as a woman and her irreplaceable roles as a daughter, wife, and mother. And together, Moms for Life, we complement the work of Dads for Life in building a strong family in an increasingly complex world. And if you want to know more about our programs, simply scan the QR code or visit our website at fathers.com.sg. Thank you.
Thank you, Alvina. I mean, shared parenting is a good point. And I do want to just pick up on a couple of points that you made, if I may, and you can expand on them just a little bit. Gender bias is real. We think it's not, but it is. It doesn't matter where we've come from and our status in life. Gender bias is real. Maybe we were brought up thinking that women only do this and men only do that. Mm-hmm. Are you seeing, just two things, are you seeing more and more that within young families, younger couples, that perhaps the gender bias is slowly being erased? And that's a good thing, I know. Are you seeing that? Before I ask you my next, share next point with you.
Well, I think from the poll itself, I think we're seeing that, especially with the younger generation, and even the study as well. They're seeing more and more of a sort of a more fair sort of distribution in that sense of or shared responsibilities with, I think, couples below the age of 35. So I think there is definitely something going there, but we also realize that this whole idea of shared responsibilities, it's a lot easier before the children come into the picture. Okay, so once the children come into the picture, then it's like, whoa, a lot of things change. But yes, I would like to add, I think, with the younger generation or younger generation of parents, they're learning all these other skills. They feel less inhibited in, I want to cook, or
Mm.
and
Yeah.
playing to their strengths, and as wives, they become more open. Why don't you try this? Why don't you try that?
Mm. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think
Yeah.
we're being a lot more open-minded in those aspects. And I would like to say as well that I think as mothers, I personally, let my children, boys, girls, whatever, there are no gender duties or chores around the house. You do it all, because we live together, we share the space, so everyone's doing it all.
Yeah. I mean, my era when I was growing up, it was very clear that whole gender split of the men would do this and the women would do that in the household. And it was something I grew up with. And it's something that I still do, maybe because it's the back of my head. And so, I just do it without thinking. But it was very clear, those gender roles in the family that I grew up in. And you talked about shared parenting before we move on to Dr. Sidharth. And it's not a 50-50 split, but do couples need to actually say, you know what, we need to plan this? Or is it intentionally planned, or do you let it grow organically? Because organic growth for shared parenting or shared roles in the home could end up with a 90-10 sort of, and the way it's going to balance out, right? The women end up with the 90%.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. No, you definitely need to talk about it. And it's definitely better to talk about it before anything happens. I mean, before you get married, I think these are things that are worthwhile to ask. But before the baby comes, it's worthwhile to talk about it. And then there's a higher chance of things working out to both favors, their favors, rather than not talking about it. Talk about it. And like I said, make room for renegotiation. If something's not working out, or someone's not following up on their, agreement, then let's talk about this again.
Yeah, that's a good point, that we're allowed to make changes as we go. Nothing's cast in stone. And as we grow, as our children grow, as our marriage goes through the different seasons of life, and as our children grow, we go through many seasons as well. Alvina, thank you very much for that presentation. Hopefully you get lots of questions later. Just a reminder to our attendees, you can ask questions of our panelists, and you can go to the Q&A box and type in your questions there. That's the only way that we'll be able to get your questions. So get them in early so that we'll make time to answer as many of those questions as we can. Okay, so moving on from Alvina and looking at the family and looking at how parents can be partners, parents can also work with the rest of the family to ensure their well-being and the well-being of people around them, particularly the children. And in this time of COVID, in the last 2 years particularly, I think not just Dr. Sidharth, but all of us have had to rework many things, whether it's our schedules, the way we eat, the way we live. So let's have a think about that and get Dr. Sidharth to talk about how we can ensure our well-being during COVID. Dr. Sid?
Thank you, Susan. Thank you for my kind introduction. And Alvina, thank you for the wonderful sharing. Yeah, very valid points. And I could sort of, identify myself with whatever you were sharing with us. So thank you for that. What I'm going to talk about today with everyone is what we can do from a COVID perspective, how we can ensure our well-being, especially for our kids. And this is a very relevant topic in today's context. And this is a big topic at hand, not only today, but in our daily conversations, in our daily social life. So I'll be taking you through some information regarding what we can do and what are the issues at hand. However, before we start that, just a couple of housekeeping points. I think, first of all, the information that I'm going to share with you today about COVID-19, this state of information is constantly growing and evolving. So please do keep that in mind. And secondly, whatever you would see in my slides basically is not meant to be a direct medical advice for the individuals. And in case direct medical advice is required, please do consult your personal doctor. Next slide, please. So if I'm allowed to use the term, probably we today live in a new world, a completely new world, as compared to the world that existed prior to 2020, or what we call the pre-pandemic era. And having said that, this to me is basically one of the most defining challenges of human existence, and probably to all of us, considering that the world has changed significantly. And I recall that in February last month, actually, our health minister made a statement that Singaporeans should expect 15 to 20,000 cases of COVID infections per day, considering the very severe transmissibility of the Omicron variant. And this is expected. This is absolutely expected because, as Singapore is taking steps towards living with COVID-19 and treating the virus as an endemic, we should actually be seeing these numbers peak and then slowly start coming down. And what are the other numbers? So in spite of the fact that this is going to peak and then come down, but there are still some statistics which are really alarming in a way, which we should all be aware of. So as of last month, we had almost 700,000 Singaporeans who had contracted COVID-19, which practically represents more than 12% of the Singapore population. And out of this population that had contracted COVID-19, almost 10% have been hospitalized till February of this year. And if you look at the global scenario, so it's not about Singapore only. If you look at the global scenario since Omicron variant, what we call the variant of concern, has emerged, we have seen globally COVID cases have really shot up, and they have reached an all-time high of almost 374 cases per million people, which is effectively 3 times more. And this is the key statistics here. It's 3 times more than what we saw when the Delta variant was at its peak globally. So this just gives you an idea that COVID-19 is here. It's infecting more residents in Singapore and is infecting more people globally as well. And therefore, we need to be very careful about this. We need to take steps to protect ourselves and our loved ones. And as a medical doctor and as a father, I would really want to share some tips and some knowledge with you around how do we look at this condition and what best can be done around COVID. Next slide, please. So what's the fact as far as COVID is concerned in terms of the children today with the Omicron variant coming into play? The fact remains, and data shows us that infections are trending up for children with this new variant. Thankfully, whilst the numbers are going up for children, they are not falling ill seriously in terms of what actually that means. That means that in terms of the symptoms they develop, they are not as severe as the elderly. But the fact remains that as compared to the Delta variant, there are more children now getting infected with COVID. And we are seeing spikes. We are seeing spikes where the rate of infection is going high for children. Symptoms, as I said, are definitely more pronounced as compared to the Delta variant. And these symptoms are more from an infestation perspective, which are impacting the lungs for children. So the children who are exhibiting, most of the children who are exhibiting symptoms of COVID-19 are showing symptoms related to lungs, where their lungs get involved. And that could be infection of the upper airway, or they could be asthma type syndromes because there's an inflammation of the respiratory tract. But as I said, in spite of all these symptoms being in place, the hospitalization rates for children remain significantly low. And as of February 2022, we had 5% of the children who developed infections who were hospitalized in Singapore. And that too, not for very critical reasons, but primarily for monitoring and maintenance. So this is what we call a precautionary hospitalization. So to summarize on this slide, we've seen cases going up, we've seen numbers going up, we've seen infection spikes in children. We're seeing a little bit of hospitalizations, but at the end of the day, not very severe, not very critical. Next slide, please. So in terms of the kids, should they get vaccinated? I think that is a question that many people ask me on a regular basis. Should the kids get vaccinated? Because the question is, look, if it's not impacting kids in a big way, in a major way, should we be vaccinating our kids? But before I answer that question, probably just to give you an idea that almost 250,000 kids are already vaccinated with their first dose as of today. Now, should kids get vaccinated? So my personal take is that definitely they should get vaccinated. And then the question arises, why should they get vaccinated if I'm talking about the fact that, it's not a severe condition for kids? But numbers speak for themselves. And the fact remains that whilst kids don't have a severe infection per se, but by getting vaccinated, they reduce the risk of infection for themselves. And if they are infected after vaccination, they reduce severe symptoms, which means that the onset of this condition for them, if they are diagnosed to be positive, is relatively mild. The vaccines that are approved by MOH Singapore are absolutely safe and effective. This has been tried out in data trials here in Singapore, and therefore are approved for vaccination in Singapore. After the vaccines are given to kids, and especially I'm referring to age groups between 5 to 11, we have not seen very high incidences of allergic reactions, because that's the commonest of, generally for all vaccines, allergic reaction is a very common side effect if that happens for a kid. So when I say it's a common side effect, doesn't mean that everybody has it, but for those who have side effects, out of those side effects, the allergic reactions are the most common. So we have realized that we have seen as per data that the incidence of severe allergic reaction is very low. Having said that, we do see some anaphylaxis happening, which is a allergic reaction to the vaccination, but the incidence is significantly low. What we are also seeing is that there is some inflammation of organs, including the heart. So what we also call as the multi-system inflammatory syndrome, which can cause infection, which can cause high fever, which can cause difficulty in breathing, which can cause headache. This does happen after vaccination, and it's a serious condition. It's a serious side effect. But the probability of this happening is significantly low, that it really sort of does not mean that we should not be taking kids for vaccination. So if you look at the probability of an MIS, a multi-system inflammatory syndrome happening, it's at a very significantly low numbers, which actually makes the vaccination very safe for the kids. So what is important here is that if, however, you're already aware that children or your kids, they are prone to allergic reactions after vaccines, and you would have observed that with the regular vaccination schedules that kids follow, it's advisable not to get the kid vaccinated without seeking medical advice, because you already know that the kids are already prone to allergic reactions from past experience. So do please always consult your doctor in case you're already aware. If your child has some severe health conditions, already known serious and severe health conditions, that's also an indication that medical advice from your doctor should be sought before actually going for vaccination. However, sometimes people do ask me, what if my children generally are weak and their immune system is low and they are prone to coughs and colds and on a regular basis, should we go for the vaccine? In that case, the answer is yes. It's all the more reason with the coughs and the colds and a weak immunity, which is not linked to any underlying health condition. In that case, also the children should be going for vaccination, because these are exactly the kids who really need some external support in terms of boosting their immunity from a vaccination perspective, so that they are healthy and do not develop severe complications if they contract COVID-19. Next slide, please. So I would move on from here and talk about, now once the kids are vaccinated, what happens next? So as you would know, all vaccines have some side effects, and it's not only about the COVID-19 vaccination, but any other vaccine that kids take or are administered with in their routine vaccination schedule, they do tend to develop some side effects. So the commonest of all side effects basically are pain, there's a redness at the point where the vaccine has been administered, there's swelling at the injection site, and these are very common symptoms. Probably every kid might be getting it after vaccination. Some kids do also develop fever and chills after the vaccination. Some complain about headache, muscle pain, joint pain. There's a sense of fatigue, and sometimes there's a lymph node swelling, the small nodular things that start sort of swelling. on the neck or under the arms. Now, it's a very normal process in terms of this is the normal body reaction to the vaccine. And for that, management is more or less straightforward. Self-isolate at home, wait for the fever to subside. In case of high-grade fever, no harm in taking paracetamol tablets. It's a standard, safe drug for people of all ages, including kids. If kids are complaining of tiredness or fatigue, the best thing is to take rest. And in case there's a mild swelling, the swelling would actually resolve by itself in a week or so. And now, what is important as per the MOH guidelines, that when kids are administered COVID vaccines, it's advisable not to do any strenuous exercises for 14 days or over 2 weeks post-vaccination or post each dose. Next, please. So once you have observed the child at home, then the question is, when do you really need to get alarmed and say, okay, the vaccination is administered, things are not resolving, when should I really sort of take my child to the doctor? So definitely if there's fever, which is persistent and continues for more than 2 days, it's one of the symptoms when you should actually seek medical help. If respiratory symptoms, because as I explained earlier, the respiratory symptoms are very common manifestations in terms of COVID. And if you see such symptoms coming post-vaccination as well, like cough. So what are respiratory symptoms? Like cough, like a runny nose, sore throat, or even shortness of breath or loss of taste or smell and smell or smell, taste and smell, please do see your doctor. Chest pain, if children are complaining about chest pain, do please see a doctor after if this persists for 48 hours. Now, as I explained earlier, there's something what we call anaphylaxis or an anaphylactic shock. Now, that's what we call a severe allergic reaction to the vaccine. Now, this is actually a very serious symptom and needs immediate medical advice and medical help. So if you see this happening, and how do you really identify that this is actually an anaphylactic shock or a severe allergic reaction developing? So the common signs include difficulty breathing, the face gets swollen, the lips get swollen, you can even see the eyes swollen. So you can observe it, you can visually see all this. You can see a very high pulse rate, there's dizziness, the child complains of weakness. And one of the most common symptoms is rash, a very bad rash all over the body where kids start itching very badly. So if you see any of these symptoms, it's a sign that there could be an allergic reaction. So please do seek medical attention immediately. Can we go to the next one, please? So now let's assume that the kid has already contracted COVID-19. Happens. We see data, we see children developing COVID-19, and with the new guidelines, there's home isolation. Yeah, for children as young as 3, you can have home isolation for COVID. So the question is for the parents now, how do you really manage kids, at home? What needs to be done? Besides, of course, the paracetamols and etc. But first of all, I think for the parents, it's very important to have an open communication with the kids, especially with the child that has contracted COVID, to explain the reason for isolation. Because kids at such a young age, for 5 years, 6 years, 7 years, 8 years, they really do not understand what's the need for isolating and why am I being asked to isolate. And it's up to the parents to actually have an honest and open communication with them to explain the need and the reasons for isolation. At the same time, because small kids, they might not have very strong immune systems, it's very important to monitor the vitals on a constant basis. Now, when I say vitals, basically monitor the temperature on a regular basis. If possible, do monitor oxygen saturation. If it's possible, do monitor that as well, and look after the general well-being. See whether the kid is being cranky, whether the kid is not calm. Do follow and observe the general well-being of the kids. So what is also important is that because of the health condition, because of the fever, because of fatigue or dizziness or tiredness, kids might tend to get very cranky if they are feeling unwell. And it's obvious because it's a small child. Please do ensure to engage them with activities, and generally non-screen activities, such as Lego projects, such as jigsaw puzzles, or whatever the kid really likes from an involvement in activities perspective. But do keep the kids busy so that, they do not really feel the pain of what they are going through at that moment. And what's also important is that there could be other siblings in the house. So they need to be isolated as well. And the family, and especially the siblings, also need to understand the reasons why one of their siblings is being isolated from them all. So this is something you really need to understand well. And also prepare the child's medical history. Keep the child's medical history readily available, because you may need to seek medical help if this situation deteriorates, and you really need to share that medical history urgently with a health practitioner. Please ensure that there's at least one primary caregiver who is all the time with the child and can sort of communicate information from the child to the other family members and vice versa. One key point that I would really want to talk about in this slide is that watch out for MIS symptoms. And these are very severe symptoms that develop in children after a COVID infection, and that generally happens after 2 to 8 weeks after COVID-19 infection. Now, it's not to say that it happens in every child, but if it happens in some child, it's something that you need to identify and understand what's happening with your child. And it's a symptom which basically happens when the child's immune system overreacts after COVID-19 infection. And a very rare syndrome, but if it happens, the child may require urgent care. And this syndrome actually simultaneously impacts multiple organs such as heart, lungs, kidney, the skin, the eyes. So how you could identify it, it's abdominal pain, fever, vomiting, and diarrhea. These are the common complaints that you see developing, and these are the initial red flags that you really need to understand and observe and then seek medical help. And this is something very serious. So for such symptoms too, please seek urgent medical help. Next slide, please. So finally, many of you would be planning to get your booster shot, or your kids may also be lining up for their jab soon, the first one or the second one. So Prudential is very soon relaunching our complimentary plan related to financial concerns for you or your children because of the side effects of COVID-19 vaccination. So under these plans, young Singapore residents between 5 and 17 years old and their parents can sign up for this plan, which is a complimentary plan, and customers will receive a cash allowance of $100 per day of hospitalization for up to 14 days, should they be hospitalized within 7 days of receiving each COVID-19 vaccination dosage. And this is completely a complimentary plan, which parents and their children can avail of from Prudential's app, healthcare app. So not only that, what also happens under this plan is that you can avail of a 24/7 consultation with our doctors through our healthcare app, and at a very, very nominal rate of $5 per session, especially for Prudential's customers. Can we go to the next slide, please? And this is my last slide. If you want to sign up for this complimentary product, the QR code is in front of your screen. Please feel free to register and download the app, and then you can actually avail of this complimentary product. So that brings me to the end of my presentation. Thank you very much for your time, and happy to take any questions later. Thank you.
Dr. Sidharth, thank you so much. When you talk about isolation, I'm nodding my head because, I've known of not just young children, but old people, seniors as well. I have a friend who just texted me, my father was in isolation. He was feeling great. He was only down for a few days, but boy, he was banging on the door to get out. So I can only imagine how difficult it must be for young children Yeah, who don't understand why they can't go out there and play with their brothers and sisters. So your tips are great to keep them occupied. And it's not just all about screen time, but other things as well. But having said that, though, it's difficult. So Dr. Sid, thank you very much for your tips indeed. Yeah. And so as we move on, you can also be reminded at this time, if you haven't done it yet, to please just scan this QR code that you see on the screen there for your free goodie bag. You can do that now, okay? So do remember that. Okay, so let's move on. I think people would have done that already. Now, this next topic, again, something quite close to my heart, because when we were growing up, we would always be told by our parents, I don't know, my parents, grandparents, they would always say, drink more water. And they would never tell us why. Now we know why. But drinking water is important. It's not just for hydration, but I think it is important to be able to put enough liquids into us. If we're talking about children, I think that's important. Sometimes we forget. So here's that big question, right, Brian? Brian is our next speaker. So Brian, I'm sure people ask you this all the time. Yes, drink water, Brian, but how much water must we drink? Brian.
Right. Okay. Thank you, Alvina, and also Dr. Sidharth and Susan yourself. So how much water actually should we be drinking on a daily basis, right? It varies because adults and kids, and even kids from different ages groups, will actually consume different amounts. So so babies, right, or infants between 6 to 1 will actually be just introduced to water. Before that, will all be breastfeeding and also infant formula. So at maximum, that should be only at 8 ounces a day. Okay, so from 1 to 3 years old, it will be a 4 cups daily. Okay, 4 to 8 years old will be 5 cups daily, and also 8 years old and older will be where you as teenagers or even adults will be 7 to 8 cups a day. It doesn't have to necessarily be just water. It can be different beverages, but water definitely is more essential and more recommended. Okay, so we all know that actually water is good for you, but how is it actually good for you? So with 0 calories and sugar, it hydrates your body. Okay, it also helps to bring the minerals, essential minerals throughout our through blood circulation, and even strengthening our bones and teeth, as well as also helping us to suppress our hunger sometimes when we're feeling peckish and all. Okay, so it's also as you can see, it's also the most economical, cheapest, most widely available option there. Okay, so fun fact is that some of the even bottled juices may actually consume too much sugar at times. So actually we shouldn't, it's not say we shouldn't drink juices, but everything in moderation. Too much of a good thing, too much of anything is never a good thing. Okay, so brings us to our next slide. So water doesn't really have to be boring. So this can be, because sometimes when we want to drink water, it's a bit boring. So we have cravings, and we want to actually, how can we actually substitute water being boring, right? It's actually using or infuse the fruits and vegetables. So we can use lemons, cucumbers, berries, and all to actually add into our water to make it more fun. Can also be activity, because you can actually grab an ice cube tray and then you can place a few berries and add water and then freeze it, and so that your water will look a bit more cooler. Okay, so this is just to help and teach our kids. Why? Because we shouldn't actually let our kids drink sweet drinks too often, or introduce that to them at a very young age, because it will it will actually discourage the habit of drinking water. And water is very essential, and we should actually inculcate the habit of water drinking as priority. Okay, so yeah, just like breathing, we don't need to think, we just drink the water. It should be as easy as that. Okay, so brings us to our next point is that, so most important is that why we have to drink is because we will be dehydrated if we do not actually have enough water. So these are actually the signs of dehydration in your children. So reducing of wetting of diapers, sunken soft spots on the baby's head, even overly sleepy. the last one will actually be no tears when they cry, but sometimes, yeah, it's just they want attention and all. So these are actually very, very vital information to help to understand whether your kids are dehydrated or not. I think the best way is to actually based on habit and timing. So every hour we hydrate a little bit now. Okay. So brings us also to our next point is that besides drinking enough water I feel should also be clean. Why is that so? It's actually because that in Singapore itself, we have actually more than 800 kilometers worth of water piping. So sometimes, or even in the olden days, we actually have, or we always see this white cloth or tea bag that's actually tied to the faucet. It always turn brown over time because it's actually minerals, but also sometimes maybe it's sand, rust, and clay. So just imagine 800 kilometers worth of water piping. We need a lot of like ninja turtles below trying to clean the water pipes and all. Okay, so how do we actually clean the water, right? Let me move on to the next slide. Okay, so using chlorine is actually the best way to clean the water, or basically it's actually the most economical way. So it's a very old school method, and it's actually to remove germs and bacteria. However, actually long-term effects of chlorine consuming actually has this effect called, or because when an organic substance mix with chlorine, it actually produces this THMS, basically called trihalomethanes. So it actually aggravates like eczema and all. So sometimes even when we swim or when we shower, we may actually feel there's a bit of rashes, or even people with eczema will feel that why is it more itchy when we swim and all. So even illnesses, THMS can cause that. So maybe you want to do a bit of research on it. So chlorine, yes, it's needed, but how do we remove it after that? So after it's played its part, so we can actually use a carbon filtration. Carbon filtration is actually normally made out of very natural coconut husk. So it does not actually have any side effects. So this is actually to help to reduce the amount of chlorine in our water. So chlorine actually has a very specific strong taste in our water. It's just like when we go to restaurants, you will be offered tap water or even bottled water. So some of us choose bottle because we cannot accept the water having taste. Or even after boiling also, we actually will feel that it still has a very strong taste. So using a carbon filtration minimally is actually quite good enough. So yeah. So my slide's a bit short. So I'm also happy to answer any of the questions that you guys may actually want to ask. So yeah, hope you actually understand a little bit more about water education.
Thank you so much, Brian. I mean, really helpful information to have. And I do like your tip about when you said, when you put like little berries into your ice cube trays, fill it up with water. And when the children want to have a drink with ice cubes in it, so cool, right? To bring out an ice cube with a little bit of berries inside, especially blueberries and things like that. Here's a QR code that you can scan. Yeah, Brian?
Yes. So we are having actually promotions for our water dispensers and water filtrations. Just scan on the QR code and then you can actually connect directly with me, and I will actually explain on the different packages, different products that we actually have to, because we have a full range to actually help you to understand it to suit the family's needs actually. So yeah, just scan this QR code and yeah.
Okay.
Maybe yeah. Okay.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so some of them has been asking questions.
Yes, that's right. So just a reminder to all the attendees, I hope you've enjoyed the 3 presentations. We want to thank Brian, Dr. Sid, and Alvina for their presentations. I know you have questions. We're seeing lots of them. I'm not sure we'll have time to answer every single question, but certainly keep your questions coming in. Use the Q&A tab that you see at the bottom of your screen and just type in your questions there. And we're going to go straight into our Q&A, I think, because we do have quite a number of questions to get through. I'd like to actually start off with talking about immunity because Dr. Sidharth, you had touched on this earlier. And boosting immunity at this time, I'm sure that, all of us get asked this. I know I ask myself this all the time. And immunity is important, but how important is it? I mean, I don't do anything super special, but every morning I do take a multivitamin, and I've been doing this for a long time. And it makes me feel better, but I feel that I'm doing something. And I also try to keep up the water drinking, at all times. Sometimes it's difficult because of my job, and we can't get to go to the bathroom as often as we would like. So we go for hours not drinking water at a time. But, we try to do that when we come home. So keeping ourselves immune. So let's talk about that with our three speakers. First of all, what can we do to boost the immunity of our family, particularly our children and our younger children, especially during this time? Dr. Sid, can I put this to you first?
Yeah, thanks, Susan. I think this is a very, very appropriate and relevant question in today's context, both in terms of the COVID and in terms of the overall family health, right? I think there's no simplistic answer to this. There's no magic wand here, that you just have that wand and immunity just comes in. Acquiring good immunity is a combination of both natural factors as well as you rightly pointed out, some immunity boosting supplements as well. But let me first touch upon the key factors, and that's natural factors. And when we advise our patients, when we advise people who ask us this question, I think it's a mix of different things. So one, of course, nothing beats proper nutrition and hydration. Whilst I will not get into the details of what proper nutrition means, but I think from a medical perspective, we always say the golden thumb rule is proper nutrition and hydration. This is the best thing that really helps in terms of boosting immunity, be it for adults or be it for kids. I think the other thing that we generally overlook, again for kids and adults as well, is proper sleep. We all need a minimum X hours of sleep depending on our age. And believe you me, that's a super battery charger for us in terms of helping us with the immunity. When we talk about kids, what also boosts their immunity is do make them active. There's too much of screen time. There's too much of sitting at home, going out to the playground, meeting friends in the real world, not in the virtual world, but in the real world is fantastic. Kids are under a lot of stress these days, be it their studies, be it their social relationships. It's also important to manage stress and make them happy. So what makes them happy that really needs to be looked into so that we can manage their stress levels and it boosts their immunity. What is also important, and this is concerning smaller kids, is that please ensure that they are fully vaccinated. And it's not about COVID vaccination. It's about the regular updated schedule of vaccines that they need to have, which also boosts their immunity as their antibodies are developing, So that's very important. And lastly, coming back to the COVID world, the precautions in the new world. Kids have to be trained on this. Our masks, our social distancing, our hand washing at a regular basis. So these are some of the natural things that we can really do in terms of outside of the supplements. But supplements, over and above all these factors, supplements are also key to enhancing our immunity. And when we talk of supplements, there is zinc, there are different minerals, there are different vitamins. All this helps if taken in the right quantity. That's also very important. You can't be just thinking that, okay, let me do 3-4 tablets of vitamin C every day. Let me take tons of zinc and tons of mineral and immunity grows. No, it's not like that. It can then actually have side effects. So if you know the right balance of supplements in the right dosage for the right ages and following the natural path, I think the combination of these two should actually help in boosting immunity, both for adults and kids.
Dr. Sidharth, would a young parent or a parent of a young child, quite new to all of this, since we're talking about supplements, and we don't want to give our children too much, you're right, there is such a thing as too much. Do we then get some advice and help perhaps from a medical professional, a pharmacist, someone like that, who might be able to offer some advice?
Yes, I think that should be fine. That should be fine. Generally, a pharmacist or a medical professional would be able to help with the right dosage for kids. So it's always advisable to seek advice that what is the right dosage? Because believe you me, we have seen cases where because of overdosage of multivitamins, overdosage of vitamin C, there are side effects, severe side effects. This might sound very strange, but it does happen. So it's always advisable to check with your medical healthcare provider in terms of what's the right dosage. But yes, it is helpful if taken in right dosage.
So I guess this is really a case of too much of a good thing isn't actually very good. You need to have everything in moderation, wouldn't you? Yeah, Dr. Sid?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, so continue our chat first before we go into some other questions that we're also seeing on immunity. Bryan, any advice from you before we go to Alvina?
Sorry, again, the question is, how do we have the immunity? Right?
Yeah.
I think the vitamin C point is actually quite good. For myself, I drink those vitamin pills in the water.
Yes, in the water. Also, it makes you drink water.
The dissolving ones. It's also a cheat because sometimes you just don't want to make it boring for the water, so it's just
No, that's what my father used to do, to trick us into drinking water, is to buy the dissolvable, the fizzy one.
Yeah,
so
the effervescence.
Yes, so it feels like you're drinking. Yes,
it's a nice
it's like you're drinking an orange soda, So a little bit of a cheat, but that's a good point, Bryan. Thank you.
But
what
I think
about
also, through all the hand sanitizing, all these good habits must be inculcated to top priority now because the pandemic and all. So I think that's more of my points.
Absolutely. So what about for you, Alvina, amongst your children, and in your family, how do you go about boosting their immunity?
I think what everyone said, I'll be repeating the same thing. So let me get it take it from a different angle. I think one way is for the parents to set an example. Whether it is to be more active, have more fruits and vegetables. Sometimes, if parents are pushing their kids to do all of that and the kids don't see the parents doing the same, I think that might be another battle to fight. So I think, I agree with what Dr. Sidharth and Bryan has shared. All these things, I think they play a very important role. And I think as parents, as partners, we should also be part of this whole boosting of the immunity and doing it together and being good examples.
Yeah, this whole role modeling thing, Dr. Sid, you're absolutely right. You tell, go out there to play, and then I'm on my phone and playing a game myself, but on my device. I want to pick up the point of vitamin C with you, Dr. Sid, before we move on to another question. I mean, I've read there's lots of literature on this. There's also people around us who will tell you that vitamin C is very important. It's important for immunity. Again, how do I know that my children are getting enough vitamin C?
So thanks for this question. I think before we get into that, because I think that's more straightforward to answer. There's a specific dosage for vitamin C for children, and that needs to be followed. But before that, before we answer that, what's the dosage? Okay, it's 1,000 grams a day for kids. The question is vitamin C helpful? I think that's a question we need to sort of address first, right? Because there are lots and lots of studies related to vitamin C. And the fact remains that in itself, vitamin C I would say the chemical term for vitamin C is ascorbic acid. It's really helpful because it helps tissue and bone grow. There's a lot of research being done on vitamin C and vitamin C supplements. And there are different findings. So some research findings say, it's very helpful. As a supplement, some say, okay, there's not enough data to sort of validate that it's very helpful. But definitely the studies that have been done on vitamin C, all those studies give us a few common outputs, in terms of what are the results. And the results are very interesting. That one, vitamin C really helps in managing viral and bacterial infections. They sort of reduce their severity or alleviate the risks from those infections. And since we are talking about COVID-19, right, it's a viral infection. Secondly, the studies also tell us that, they are sort of very helpful for those people who develop a respiratory tract infection, right? And again, since we are talking of COVID-19, the commonest symptoms are respiratory tract infections, right? So again, sort of the data that we have or the output from the studies that we see sort of validates that yes, vitamin C is a good supplement to have. Also, it's not only about COVID, but the studies that have been done on vitamin C, they have found evidence that they can help with other chronic conditions as well in terms of developing the human immunity. So it's not only restricted to usage for COVID-19, but for other health conditions as well. And these studies have been done on different aspects with people who are suffering from heart conditions, from respiratory conditions, and many other diseases. What has been found out that if these people then get hospitalized because of their underlying health condition, if they have been treated with vitamin C or have been taking regular treatment with vitamin C, the severity of the condition is much reduced. So in itself, data suggests from these studies that even if there's a hospitalization, even if the person is sick with different health conditions, those people who have been taking vitamin C, generally the severity is less severe and the prognosis is better. So all said and done, I think as a vitamin supplement, while there are different studies and different opinions out there, generally we can safely say that it's a good supplement to have for adults as well as for kids. And generally for kids, the dosage is around 1,000 grams a day.
Okay, certainly good advice.
Yeah.
Given us a lot of food for thought there, Dr. Sid. Thank you so much. And we want to encourage you to continue sending in your questions to our Q&A chat, and you can see the Q&A tab at the bottom of your screen. So we are now going to be taking quite a number of questions that have come in for our three panelists. And I want to start with you, Alvina. Okay, so we start with Alvina, and the first thing that we want to put to you is a question that has come in from Mei Ling. How do we discipline children when the children have got to go to dad? Okay, so that's a tough question, Alvina. You know,
that's also an interesting one.
It's a very interesting one. So I'm guessing that the person who's asked the question is the disciplinarian in the family.
That's right. Right. So my first thought really is to find out why the child prefers one parent over the other. I think that's worth investigating and finding out. I think to know what's the reason behind it. Another thing, in line with what I was sharing as parents, as partners, it's really about that alliance. I can't say any much more advocate for a couple to have a united front, and particularly when it comes to discipline, because children are very, very smart. They know when there is a divided front, and they know who to go to for what they need. If dad is the one who tends to say yes, okay, then just go to dad, right? So I think that united front, the alliance needs to happen. So my advice really here is, of course, one is find out what's the issue really with the child. I think it's very important to find out from the child's point of view. It could be unreasonable or whatever it is. It doesn't match the child's temperament, perhaps. And I think the other thing that is important in terms of united front really is one strategy could be with discussing with your spouse. It's really to come up with an approach, which could be, you know what, when it comes to matters of discipline, let's not meet out the discipline or whatever it may be. Let's have time to discuss it first. And then we decide together. And that's the united front. And children really, really need to see that. And then hopefully that would lessen the whole pick a side dilemma.
Here's a question that's a little bit opposite of what we just posed to you, right? Sure. And so the question is, my son likes to stick to me. How do I get him to go to dad more?
Right. Dr. Sidharth is
Dr.
laughing.
Sid, he's laughing.
He's got some good tips, I think.
Oh, I know.
Right,
I know.
I think it depends on the age of the child, I think as well, we have to consider. But with all things, when it comes to wanting to spend time with a parent, I think it's all about relationship, really. And so what we want to do is to make sure we sort of regain that connection between parent and child, right? And that means time. It's time. Increase that time spent. So as a mom, this question, I would definitely encourage to create that opportunity. You don't want to scare the child, really. So keep it brief, if it's going to be 10 minutes, but keep it, and also make sure it's frequent so that the child warms up to the idea of, I can have alone time with my dad, so keep it brief, frequent enough so it doesn't shock the child's system, and makes it terrifying for both dad and child. This experience becomes more traumatic than enjoyable, which comes to the next point. When thinking of how to encourage father and child to spend more time, you need to find out what the child likes. Then the child will enjoy time spending with dad. So it's not from a parent's perspective of, this is how I want to spend time with my child. It's what does my child enjoy? And then the buy-in is a lot easier. So brief, frequent, and then make sure you know what it is an activity that your child enjoys.
Yeah, then mom can get a little bit more me time, I think. Yeah, that's also
Yes,
important
absolutely.
for mom. Yeah. Okay, so I want to move on to Dr. Sid. There are a couple of questions that have come in for you with relation to your comments made with regard to the vaccines and vaccination for children. My child's got COVID. After how many months then do we need to take the children for the vaccine, for their vaccine shot?
Yeah, thanks, Susan. That's a very pertinent question. To be honest, first of all, the first part of the question is that should we be vaccinating our children if they have already contracted COVID? Right? I think let's start from here. And the answer is absolutely yes. Absolutely yes. And why? Because you see, what happens that when somebody contracts COVID, and it's not about kids, it's about adults as well, we develop antibodies against that virus. But these antibodies don't last us a lifetime. And we don't have enough data today to even understand how long the impact or the effect of these antibodies lasts in our body, whether be it antibodies induced because of a COVID infection or because of a vaccination, right? So the point is, should we be taking kids for vaccination post contracting COVID? Yes, it's definitely yes. Now, different countries or different healthcare regulators in countries have their own protocols around when to take kids for vaccinations. So there's different feedback. If you research, you'll find that some healthcare regulators say, okay, as soon as the kid is fit enough, after the symptoms subside, can go for a vaccine. To some regulators saying 90 days, and in some countries it's even up to 180 days. But if I recall from, and we do follow Singapore MOH guidelines, right? It's probably 90 days. Please don't hold me to this number, but I think it's 90 days post COVID, diagnosis. After 90 days, you can go and get the kid vaccinated. So yes, definitely we should do that. Definitely we should boost the antibodies, and it's 90 days.
Okay, brilliant. Brian, your conversation earlier and your presentation on water, not just about drinking water, but about water that comes out of the tap. So I'm going to collapse a few questions into one, right? So you can answer it. It's sort of related. So someone has, said that the water from the taps in Singapore, they're safe. Is it healthy? And can families, everyone in the family, drink water straight from the tap? Do we need to boil the water first? Do we need to use a special machine to filter all of that? And can this also extend to babies? So this is all water related. First of all, from the tap, can everyone drink it? Can babies drink it? Can old people, grandparents, they've been drinking water from the taps for such a long time? Brian.
Okay, so from my point of view, as we are developing more and more houses and all, the pipings will actually increase. So yes, the water from the main filtration in Singapore, it's clean. However, when it travels down to our place, that's the big question mark. So I think from my point of view, I think boiling water has also been proving or have been proven to actually still have a bit of bacteria and all in our water. It really depends on the families, on how health conscious they are. But I feel that the most important is removing at least the sediments and also the chlorine from our water, all these chemicals like fluoride and all. So yeah, that's my point on whether the Singapore water is actually clean or not. I mean, there's a guideline. It should be safe, but where is it actually tested from? That's the question. Then my next point is also on babies or do we need special machines at home and all? I think this answer is actually more of overall, what kind of lifestyle do we want to actually live? More or less, or nowadays, because I've been in this industry for so long, I think more people they are actually getting systems for the convenience, but as well as having the clean water, the fact. Yeah. So, but it's just that nowadays, when with the dispensers and all, it has multi-temperature. So imagine yourself boiling, having to make formula, and then you having to test and all with the different.
Yeah.
So now with the newer systems, it's just a one fixed temperature, shake and then go. So it's very efficient. It saves a lot of time. So it's more on what kind of lifestyle do you want to live.
Right.
It saves time, it saves electricity, this and that. So it actually has a bit of contribution. So it
Mm.
really depends on the families whether they do want to invest into one. But I have been using it for very, very long, and yeah, the feedback is good.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool. But thank you so much for answering that, in such great detail. I wish we could talk some more, and I wish we could take a whole lot more questions, but we're not able to. I think we've gone a little bit over time already, but I do want to take the opportunity to thank our three panelists, Alvina, Dr. Sidharth, and Bryan. Thank you all very much for making time to join us today at this particular webinar of the Singapore Parenting Festival. I mean, you gave great pointers, good tips and everything, so that's fabulous. Here's another QR code that you can scan if you want to take a look at supplements offered by GSK, and this is a limited offer, so we'll give you a couple of seconds to just scan that QR code. Okay, and then moving on. If you've not yet scanned this, you can do it now. Okay, I think there were some people who said that they missed scanning the QR code to receive the goodie bag. Please do that. You still have a little bit more time. We'll give you a couple of seconds here as well. If you don't want to scan, you can actually just go into the QR code that is also provided on your screen. Okay, brilliant. The thing is, we've had a great time here this evening, and we also want to say thank you to all our partners who have been so supportive of the Singapore Parenting Festival. We want to specifically thank our platinum partner, Hydroflux, Yu Yang Sang, our gold partners, Dumex Spots, PCF Sparkle Tots, Naturone, silver partners, Ministry of Health Singapore, Baby Dove, Fertus Fertility Center, Prudential, and our content partners, Center for Fathering, Mums for Life, Dads for Life, Baby Pass, and of course, Families for Life. We also have our Shopee voucher winners, yes? We'll go into our Shopee voucher winners. Will give you the winners of those vouchers. And as I said earlier, 3-3 is coming up. So you might be able to put those vouchers to good use. And also you can go into the various websites. Oh, there we go. These are the winners of the $50 Shopee vouchers each. The names are all there on the screen. So Noi Ng, Ashwini Yanam, Wu Trefen, Anne Lim, Vignes J, and Duan X. Thank you so much. Now, you need to do something though. If you see your name up there, you heard it. Can we just go back to the previous slide just for a moment so we can just share the email address? Yeah, campaign@ticklemedia.com. You've got to send us your name, contact number within 3 working days of today, right? So that you can claim your prize. Again, campaign@ticklemedia.com. Okay, so congratulations again to our $50 Shopee voucher winners. Thank you so much, and congratulations. And so we come to the end of tonight's webinar. It really has been fabulous to have the time with you today. Do scan the QR code that you see in front of you. You can sign up for our next webinar. Now that's happening tomorrow. This is a fabulous topic coming up tomorrow, especially if you've got children doing the PSLE. It doesn't have to be this year, it can be next year too. This is a survival guide for you. Parents who are in our panelists they all know what this all means, right? So preschool to PSLE, a survival guide. You can sign up for the webinar taking up tomorrow at 7:30. You can then also go to the website, SPF22.theasianparent.com, okay, to get more details. Thank you all very much for making time to join us tonight at our Singapore Parenting Festival webinar. Alvina, Sidharth, and Bryan, thank you all so much. And thanks to the team, the Asian Parent team, for putting this up and for running this so well. Thank you all. Bye-bye.